Yeah. Oh, we got a nice turnout.
He earned his doctorate from Michigan State University, his master's from Ohio University, and his undergraduate degree from Springfield College. His involvement in the community includes service to the Aurora Economic Development Commission, Mercy Center, Dreyer HMO, the Aurora Police Foundation, United Way, Fox Valley Arts Council, and many, many others. Tom brings to the chamber some special skills that frankly I was unaware of, but he provided me with a 27-page resume, and I read every word of it. It's pretty dull stuff too, but when you know what you're looking for, you know, I did find a couple things in there that I think you'll be interested in. For example, one of Tom's first jobs for pay in education was back in 1966 at Oakland University in Rochester, Michigan, where he was employed as the Assistant Director of Housing. Now, his job description was to facilitate the opening of a new 600-student co-educational living unit. You get the picture here, 1966, make love not war, 600 hot young bodies, right? Tom was in charge. Also, here's something else. He's been published some 58 times, I counted them, 58 of them. And I think it's no accident that given his experience in opening that dorm, his first authorship was a publication called The Institutional Approaches to the Adjudication of Student Misconduct. Also, another item I find interesting is Tom's love of international studies, which, you know, given the global board members are with us, I think Penny Cameron and Mike McCoy are here. Are they not? Where are they? Stand up, please. There they are. Our speaker this evening is John Galloway. A 35-year veteran broadcast journalist, John is senior correspondent for WTTW-TV PBS in Chicago, host of its award-winning nightly news analysis program, Chicago Tonight with John Galloway, and director of the William Benton Fellowships in Broadcast Journalism program at the University of Chicago. Mr. Galloway's work has won more than 60 awards, including the coveted Peabody Award and 7 Emmys. Several of his program series and specials have been aired nationally on PBS, including Campaigning on Cue, Inside Television, John Galloway Interviews, and Dilemmas of Disarmament. At WTTW, Galloway has served as moderator of most of the station's town meeting programs and most of its major political debates over the past 18 years. Please welcome Chicago Television's #1 interviewer, Mr. John Galloway.
Thank you very much, and good evening. Is there anybody here who has not been introduced? Would you all, I'm serious, if you haven't been introduced, please stand. Let's give a big hand to everybody who hasn't been introduced. Yay! I've taken note of everything that's been said so far about me. And I've had some conversation up here and some conversation with some of you who've come up to chat. And I've never been so insulted in my entire life. I mean, you people. But I felt not as insulted, and is Bud Meyer still here? Bud, when you were, you know, they gave you this whole, and he's, you know, this holy man, and he's done so much for this community, so on and so forth, and then they give you the plaque, and then you came up and you had the grace to be, you know, to be brief and shut up and sit down, and I'm only using your language, people, and then And then you went over, and the man who had, this gentleman here who said he didn't know how you got all of that done because you were only here half the year, and then the guy over here says, "Thank God." And I thought Chicago was tough. I mean, to understand Chicago politics, you have to see me sitting at my desk last night writing a check for the city sticker, and I'm writing the check to Walter Kozabowski, a convicted felon. For God's sake. That's Chicago politics. And just to be personal about it, not only, I don't know if you're like, I'm busy and I kind of run out of stamps. The only stamps that I had left, I didn't buy these deliberately, they were, you go and they give them to you. The only stamps I had left were love stamps. So I had to put a love stamp onto Walter Kozabowski. God. It's just not easy. It is not easy being in Chicago. And I thought it would be great to come out here. And I was wrong. You're wrong. Sometimes you're simply wrong. These people are vicious. To accuse me of looking like Roger Hart, for God's sake! Roger Hart is one of the most despicable, disgusting, boring people I've ever met in my life. I mean it. And this guy's speech, you people, for 30 minutes sat there and took that with a straight face. I want to thank this person, that person. It's so boring. God, no wonder you got to gamble. You people are desperate for entertainment. Jesus. And his wife, God, she's out today playing golf. In this weather, 400-mile-an-hour winds. Roger, I only meant those comments personally. Don't. This is a kind of homecoming for me, talking about golf. I guess it was about 29 years ago, we lived in the city. I still live in the city. This is a problem. I still live in the city. And my wife and I and our young kids were kind of bored, and we wanted to get out of the city, and we wanted to get far enough out of the city so that we would have a sense of being in a really, truly different place without driving, 500 or 600 miles or something. And what I'm about to tell you is serious. I said, I think that if you drive, and I really had just gotten the car, didn't know that much about the exterior part of the metropolitan area. I said, I'm simply going to make a guess that if you drive, say, 40 miles west, that we'll find some interesting country. I'm just kind of a sociological guess. So we got in the car, and we drove 40 miles west, and we hit the Aurora Holiday Inn, and it had this great pool, and the kids, and then I said, you all have fun, I'm going to go find a golf club. And so I somehow got turned around, etc., and ended up on Route 25 at the Fox Valley Country Club, where I fell in love because I'm from West Virginia, and the Fox Valley Country Club to this day is as close to West Virginia as you can get. That is to say, all the holes are kind of up and down and so on and so forth. Most of the people that play are hillbillies, and so I felt right at home. And you get pumped up on that course. I think it's on number 5. You're hitting down. It's a beautiful hole. You're hitting down, and the green sets right in front of Route 25. And I have cleaned up, by the way, and I continued to play for 10 years or so at that course. I have cleaned up all of the lawsuits that I caused on the motorists coming by as I would slash 5-irons into cars coming down Route 25. So I'm glad to be back out in this part of the country, and thank you very much for inviting me. This is an extraordinary time politically in this country. President Clinton, of course, is enjoying a wonderful month or two as President of the United States. I was thinking with respect to that episode with his single name barber that it would have been more appropriate had it occurred, in the Chicago International Airport, because it's called O'Hare. Thank you and good night. But it's the Clinton presidency finds itself in the midst of what I call the problem society. And I think that if you talk with a lot of people, if you talk with Ross Perot, if you talk with conventional political commentators, they would tell you that, has anybody heard what happened to that? When I came in and they were said to be an hour away from the vote in the House on the President's economic program, and I don't know how that came out. But even if it does go through the House, we know that it's going to have very rough sailing in the Senate, and it was by no means guaranteed that it was going through the House. And if we were to pick up on the rhetoric, what I would call the conventional rhetoric of the past several years in terms of what's going on in Washington, we would say that we still are mired in gridlock. That is to say that we cannot get together as a nation and do those things which are necessary. And I want to offer this evening a kind of contrarian view about the conventional wisdom of politics, because the conventional wisdom would have you believe that the level of political leadership isn't what it used to be, or the level of political leadership is certainly not adequate to the tasks of the time, that most politicians are self-serving, et cetera, et cetera. We know the litany that goes on, and I think many of us have many of us either would say yes to that with a full heart and a full mind, or we would say that we're inclined to say, yes, John, you're right about the conventional wisdom. And yet the conventional wisdom about gridlock and the paltry nature of American politics is based on the assumption, what I would call the Perot assumption. Perot really has two assumptions that guide his politics, and I think it's important to use him as a kind of stalking horse for my comments this evening, because even though he didn't win the election, much of what he says drives American politics, or at least a part of American politics, in much the same way in 1968 when George Wallace ran against Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon in 1968 got 43% of the vote, and George Wallace, if I recall, got 47%, and then Hubert Humphrey got the rest. And Nixon spent the next 4 years really trying to get the Wallace vote. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the results in 1972, he got the Wallace vote. So that Perot, we must think about Perot as a kind of driving force of American politics right down the middle, whether or not he actually gets back in the ring for the presidency. But Perot really says that his favorite term is, it's simple. It's just simple. Lift up that hood, look under, and then fix it. That's all you got to do. My view is precisely the opposite, and that is it's complicated. Look up that hood and you got a whole bunch of worms. Under those worms you got more worms and magpies and all kinds of things. It's complicated. And then Perot also says, it's them. It's them, the special interests. They're the problem. And I say precisely the opposite. I say that the special interests are not them. The special interests are we. They are we the people. And they are to be seen in hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of organizations. And it is true that if you look at the largest special interests, and if you look at the way we finance campaigns, it is demonstrably true that the system as now constituted creates unfair access. That is to say, people with the big organizations and the big muscle and the big dollars and the campaign contributions, etc., get in to see your senator or your president, whatever it is, better than the so-called average citizen. That is demonstrably true. But I'm here to argue this evening that if you were to eliminate all unfair campaign practices, all the PACs, democratize it to the greatest extent that you possibly could. Let's see, everything is either publicly funded, or you can only contribute $5 and millions have to give $5, and then you got to do the best you can. Whatever it is, I argue that the problem is not unfair access. As a matter of fact, if I could kind of be University of Chicago economics school either realistic or cynical, it could be argued that if it were not for the unfair access, you truly would have gridlock. That is, in the end, some things get done. Somebody got in there with a little cash and a little money and a little muscle, and then I would argue, maybe you would disagree, but I would argue that sometimes when they get in there with a little cash and a little muscle and a little access, that some of those things are probably okay that they do. They probably got some missiles built that got, that helped stare down the commies so that we don't have a Cold War anymore. I mean, I hope some of that buildup that we invested in, and I trust some of that buildup had something to do with the Cold War ending. We, of course, didn't give ourselves as a people credit for that for 1 minute. I'm arguing that the special interests are we, and that the problem is not so much the unfair access, however much there is of that, but that if you took all of that away, the underlying problem would be the sincerity of the special interests. That is to say, that you can't have it both ways. You cannot have a nation which is built on a foundation now of more mature freedom and reasonably free markets, and what I think we would agree is a mixed economy, but they're reasonably free markets. You can't have all of that and the development of all of the special interests which are sincere, and then at the same time complain about the special interests. When a nurse gets up in the morning, she does not say to herself, or somebody who's in the leadership of American nurses, they do not get up in the morning and say, oh, I wonder how I can be an unfair, selfish American today and advance the cause of nursing. If you know anything about nursing or leadership in the field of nursing, you know that the people who lead that field are serious, scholarly, passionate about the excellence of nursing and medicine and health care and nurturing, etc., etc., etc. And so when they get up in the morning, they say to themselves, I wonder what it is that I can do to advance the cause of nursing in this nation as a mix of its interests so that we can have a better nation, and I can be a part of a better community, and we can bring better health care to this country. When public television executives get up in the morning, they don't say, oh, I wonder how I can be a selfish special interest person today and destroy the general polity of the United States. They do not say that. They say, if I could get more funding for truly educational children's programming, then maybe the problem that we have in this society of violent television on commercial television and the problem of reading and literacy, etc., could be advanced, or we could work on that problem if I could get funding for children's programming out of the Congress of the United States or the legislature of the state of Illinois. Now replicate that by thousands and thousands of special interests. I have a directory at home of all the organizations, and it is a directory this big of all the organizations. And I am sure that some of those organizations represent the kind of lobbying interest that we would see as really unfair and pernicious and counterproductive, etc. But the vast majority of those persons represent you and me in this room. We are they. I could paint a picture of myself if we had a kind of a graphic chart that they use on television, which would show me as a person of 80 or 100 or 300 special interests. And so when we talk about them, we're really talking about we. And I love the notion of, well, we can't go towards an industrial policy in this country. You see, we must be free. It's we have. You want to know what your industrial policy is, ladies and gentlemen? It's your friendly. You want to know a nation's heart and soul? Look at its tax code. What is our industrial policy over the last 25, 30 years? Our industrial policy, number one, is military-industrial complex. You may be for that, you may be against it, but it was a great big piece of change, and we all contributed to it, and there were all kinds of investment decisions made to steer towards that. And oh, by the way, whoever's president over the next 10 years gets to preside over the kind of deconstruction of that. Have a nice nightmare, Mr. President or Ms. President or whoever it's going to be. Then we have our mortgage deductions. And that's another huge ton of money. And that's an industrial, that is to say, that is a governmental policy. We made a value judgment that we wanted to encourage home building, and by God we did. And I think most of us are happy about that. But that was a whole governmental decision. And then we had this thing called, Ronald Reagan, of course, hated subsidies and presided over $250 billion in 8 years of agricultural subsidies. Why? Because that's a part of the American way so far. So that's a part of our industrial side. Then let's take a look at the number of dollars that we deducted if we were in big corporations or in some medium-sized corporations, on health benefits. That was another major decision that was made when we started to deal with some notion of how to do our health system back after World War II. Now, if you add up health, agriculture, the mortgage deductions, and the military-industrial complex, what do you have? You have a huge sense, you have a value sense of what this country and its representatives wanted. Now add on to that the thousands of other interests, which, as I argue, sincerely want to advance their cause, and you have what I call the problem society. And the problem with the problem society and the specialists is that they're really good. You are really good at what you do. You know what you're doing. If you're that nurse, that trucker, that public television executive, that real estate person, you know, generally speaking, how to go from point A to point B to point C. And you can show through the development of your communities and the development of your hospitals and your schools and your science and your technology, you can show this incremental progress. There are just thousands of examples. Any anthropologist will tell you that for all of those of us in the news business who tell you that so-and-so was murdered last night or that so-and-so was struck down, etc., we keep emphasizing all of those kind of negative dynamics, when as a matter of fact, the larger truth about life is that there are hundreds of thousands of cooperative and positive acts for every moment of violence, betrayal, inadequacy, etc. And so that's the way we are as a society. Specialists, of the 600,000 doctors in this country, 400,000 are specialists. Think about turning them around if you start to go for a health reform system, which is going to create a larger dependence on the general practitioner. That alone should keep Hillary Clinton up for many nights without sleep. I mean, I love this health reform thing. That is so complex. Can you see Ross Perot saying, well, it's simple. There are just 850,000 different aspects to that thing, and they're going to screw it up so good. And they are. Trust me. So you have all of those incremental people making incremental progress. And they are the specialists. Most of us are specialists. And then we sit back and look at the few remaining generalists and how they perform. You have some county commissioners here this evening. You have some aldermen. Let's say you had a U.S. senator in the House. Let's say Bill Clinton dropped by. You got me, a generalist program host who has to deal with politics and riverboat casinos one night, and healthcare the next night, and the Chicago Bulls the next night, and policy towards Bosnia the next night. All of these things. Those few remaining folks who are generalists have to deal with all of you who know what you're doing. And when you then descend upon us at the county building or city hall, or most excruciating of all, in Washington, we have to do two things. First of all, we have to act as though we know what we're doing. We go out and campaign and we say, and by the way, one of the reasons that all those promises are made by somebody like Bill Clinton is that if you don't have the discipline of a political party to say, this is the candidate, these are the three things we're going to run on, take it or leave it, America, then you have to go out on your bus and you have to promise everybody everything. And then when you get back into the White House, you look like a hypocrite and a fool because you can't conceivably deliver on all of that stuff. And if you happen to be a kind of do-gooder, compassionate kind of Democrat that wants to have a program for every pothole, you're really in trouble. If you're a Republican, at least you can claim that you're a conservative and that you only want to do a few things. But even then, because of all of the things that keep washing over the White House, you are seen to be a do-nothing because the press continues to report on the thousands of things that you don't want to do anything about. So it's a lose-lose situation. So that the generalists, trust me, I'm about to utter some words that if you hear a drunk in a bar say it, it sounds deprecating. Drunks in a bar, or people like Perot say, well, they don't know what they're doing. They know what they're doing down there. Compassionately and clinically, I want to use pretty much the same words. We generalists, literally don't know what we're doing. It doesn't mean that we're not smart. It doesn't mean that we don't do our homework. It doesn't mean that we can't try to stab to do some things. But what I mean by that generally is that if you take the specialist interest over here, And then you take the specialist interests over here, and then you have a rainbow over here, and a myriad of them coming in here, and let's say you want to do something like reform of the health system, or something with the tax code. I'm arguing, in my thinking about the problem society, that when you put all of those ingredients into the same political gas tank, that there are explosions and combustions which are unpredictable, which almost always have consequences that you did not anticipate. You think you're going in this direction, and you end up going over there. And sometimes, I don't mean to draw this totally negatively, sometimes things are better than you anticipated. But the point is, you don't know what the hell you're doing. You can't control it, because the world of complexity is so great that it is simply beyond the comprehension of the few generalists left. And therefore, we are, as a people, it seems to me, left with the conundrum of trying to hold two competing truths in our mind at the same time. On the one hand, we see identifiable problems. We don't like crime. We don't like the high taxes. We don't like inferior education in big cities, etc. Those are demonstrable problems that we ought to see, etc. But on the other hand, given the incredible wash of interests that are legitimate, that come into the desks of the few remaining generalists, editors, legislators, or whatever it is, we are fools if we think we know what we're doing most of the time as we address those general problems. And so the greatest enemy today of politics is the cynicism that occurs when you think the generalists should know what they're doing, is the cynicism that occurs when you expect a political system to behave as though it were run by the old bosses, when as a matter of fact we have a new political system in which the good news is anybody at the age of 35 or older in the United States can run for the presidency of the United States, and the bad news is anybody at the age of 35 or older can run for the presidency of the United States. This breeds, during this time of great change, it breeds cynicism. Now I say great change. Not only do you have all this specialization going on and the few generalists who are mucking it up when they try to deal with it, but it's all occurring at a time of unprecedented change in the larger sense. We're talking about the end of authoritarian colonialism. We're talking about the rise of the notion of female equality. Suppose you were in an ordinary garden variety century with 6 or 8 ordinary garden variety wars and 6 or 8 garden variety diseases killing everybody, and God said to you, by the way, in the midst of all of that, I'm going to introduce the notion of women as equals. And you say, oh God, don't do that. We can't do that. We can't handle that. It would change our literature, change our values, change our commercial code, change our family structure, it would change everything. Don't do that. But God said in the 20th century, we're going to deal with the African-American black civil rights revolution. We're going to deal with bringing lesbians and homosexuals out of the closet. We're going to deal with equal rights for women. We're going to end authoritarian socialism. We are going to introduce television. We're going to introduce international satellites. We're going to send men to the moon. We're going to introduce the spread of drugs on an unprecedented basis. We're going to introduce rock and roll music, see if you can mess with that one for a few years. And I could go on and on about the litany of everything that changed in the past 30 or 40 years. End of colonialism. End of colonialism. I just used a few words. Think about what that means. Then introduce the movement of money at the speed of electricity when you can have trillions of dollars of business done before we get up in the morning. And then we find our commentators saying, you know, we introduce pornography, rock and roll, all of that. All of this is occurring. And then our commentators say, you know, I don't think family life is what it used to be. I just, you know, these kids aren't reading like they used to. In an age when we are now undergoing the visualization of knowledge. We are now you in this community, we're making decisions about raising revenue and creating jobs for casinos. And by the way, aren't we about to do you a nice favor in Chicago? Isn't that great? You thought you had a deal. You don't have a deal. Of course, they got this big debate about, should they be on mud Should they be on water? I'm going to suggest next week helicopter casinos for Chicago, airplane casinos. You know, make O'Hare a casino. But I am saying that under the circumstances of all of that change and all of that specialization, our the statement should not be, oh, our kids aren't reading anymore, our family life is disintegrating. The statement ought to be, do you realize that under all of those circumstances, we still have functioning families? Some kids still do read? That is the miracle. If you go to a little Indian town in Alaska, you can see where one social change wiped out an entire tribal life. And none of our commentators will go up there and say, oh, the leadership of those Indians failed that society because they succumbed to liquor. Nobody would do that. You would go up there and you would say, my God, maybe in 20, 40, 60, or 80 years, with the help of the best social science, the help of God, the help of community, patience, generational change, and a little luck and some decent weather, that situation could turn around on the basis of one unsophisticated people succumbing to one social change. But this society, which can have dozens of incredible changes we haven't begun to anticipate their impact of, the telephone, intimate. Hi, Mom, I'm here. I'm in Portland, Oregon. Where? Family distances and yet closeness by phone. Faxes, music, all drugs, all this change, all this specialization. And yet we're lamenting that we have problems. I'm here to tell you, in my view, that under all of those circumstances, we're doing better than anybody has any right to expect. And so, yes, pick away at the problems. And yes, go after your politicians. And I make a career out of that. But try and hold in the back of your mind or the other side of your mind all of this complexity, all of this impossibility of dealing with all of this in a coherent way, and give yourselves a break. You're doing better than you think. Thank you.
John Galloway. Thank you, John. Makes me want to run for office. I think I'm the only one up here who hasn't taken a swipe at Roger Hart, and I'm not going to do that. Well, maybe a little. This affair is really quite a lot of work. It's who does the menu, who does the program, who gets the speakers, who does all that stuff. It isn't Roger Hart. It's Roger Hart's committee. That's who did the work. And I know there's some of them out here. I know I saw Carol Michaels, Jill Picorn, Marianne Wetzel, Diane Renner. There's some others. Would you folks please stand so we can thank you, please? There they are. This concludes the 73rd annual meeting, Greater Aurora Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much for coming. We're adjourned.
Do I close both eyes or not? Close your left eye if you want. Okay. Hopefully we'll stay in the shot, but just move it right or left before I the shot right now. Okay. And you can do that by putting your hand right here. I'm going to read. Okay. Put this on for a minute. Can you hear me?
You did a hell of a job.
Can you hear me? Okay.
I really didn't think that you were that silly for playing golf.
camera. Okay, watch your eyes. Turn this light on.
Okay.
Okay, just left or right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, good speech.
Thank you, Roger. I mean,
Roger's the other guy.
Careful. Will you take her out of here, please?
You look a lot like him. Would you back up one step?
Certainly.
Yeah, right there is fine.
Here?
Just back up a little right here.
Back in here?
Yeah. Pat, are we in the frame? Yeah. We're okay? It's fine. Okay. I think I'm just going to ask you about change, basically, and I don't know how up you are on the Aurora, but basically we're dealing with a lot of changes here in the city and how we are going to embrace that as a community. Maybe we can tie it into America going through changes too.
Okay.
Just anything. Show your support of our cause. Okay. And 3, 2, 1. I'm here now with John Galloway at the Aurora Chamber of Commerce dinner, and he had some wonderful things to say to us about change in the nation and reflecting on the Aurora's situation with the riverboat gambling. How do you feel the community is going to embrace this new prospect for business and the changes we're facing in the economy?
Well, I think that there's a great need or a perceived need to really go ahead with things like casino gambling because we don't have the manufacturing base that we used to, and people really want to support their schools and do good, and we'll have to experience some of that and see how it goes, and we can always change our mind about those things over the years. And of course the new story is how are you going to, will you be influenced if Chicago gets these riverboat casinos, and that'll be a big political battle that will be fought out over the next months, and there'll be some negotiation going on. And you know, if that negotiation brings Chicago and Aurora closer together, even in a moment of conflict, that'll be good. We ought to get to know each other better.
As a person living in the city, working in the city, I hear that you often enjoy the golf courses out here in the Fox Valley. And what do you think the opportunities will be in terms of a vacation area out here for people living and working in the city?
I think the Fox River Valley is an extraordinary place. I come from the state of West Virginia, which has hills, and so years ago I found the Fox Valley Country Club, which is a kind of hilly golf course. And I played out here for years until the traffic got too bad, which by the way is another interesting issue. But I think it's a marvelous place, and I think you ought to have a great deal of fun in developing this as a wonderful place for people to vacation or enjoy weekends.
Thank you very much. Good luck. Thank you, Pat. Thank you. Love your show, and
thank you very
appreciate
much.
you coming all the way out here.
This is for cable. Very good. Thanks so much.
I'd love to get there one day. Hey, nice job. You know what that stupid light faded? Did it? Oh. I mean, you... Okay, same thing. I gained it. Okay? Yeah. All right.
Reading, mouthpieces, etc., etc.
Oops. Am I in the shot here? Yeah, you are. Okay, this looks good. And you got this plaque in the shot? Yeah.
Okay.
What are you on the board of? I'm really
Yes,
new to this area. Your name's Bob Meyer, and you're. What was this plaque for?
Just a contribution to the city, to the chamber,
Okay.
to the work, yes. I was president of the Aurora Chamber 26 years ago.
All right.
And been active since. As I said tonight, I think it's a double thrill when it comes from your hometown.
Okay, I'll start again then.
you're chairman of one of the groups, though.
Yeah, I'm chairman of the Central City Committee, which is the downtown.
Okay. All right. Ready? And 3, 2, 1. I'm here now with Bud Meyer. Bud, you have been on in the city for quite some time. You've seen some major changes, I bet, over
Yes.
about the past 26 years. And those changes have also awarded you this plaque. Tell us a little bit about Aurora and about the honor of receiving this award.
Well, my grandparents came here 132 years ago, and of course I was born and raised here. We're now, our grandchildren are now the 5th generation in working, living in the city of Aurora, so we go back a long ways. Aurora has obviously been very dear to us, and we've worked hard at what we're doing. I'm chairman of the Central City Committee, which is the downtown, and of course the last year or two, all the excitement of the riverboats, whatever, it's just been so thrilling to us because the downtown was a dead issue and kind of the laughing stock of the area, and now it's coming back. In fact, we got congestion and complaints because there's too many people here. It's thrilling, and we're looking forward to a lot of excitement in the next year or two. It's just fun to be here.
Do you envision the downtown area becoming more entertainment-oriented with the Paramount Arts Center? And
Yes, I'm chairman of the Civic Center Authority, which includes the Paramount, and we are now working very close with the Riverboat Corporation. As you know, Tom Jones, we're going to have Frank Sinatra. On August the 19th, which will be the opening of Frank Sinatra in Aurora, that will also be our gala presentation for the year from the Paramount. We're looking forward to that. All the stars, we will enhance the Paramount program because of the additional people. We're expecting like 5,000 additional people each day coming into our downtown area. We're working with revitalization of North Broadway. We will have a meeting tomorrow morning in the mayor's office at 8 o'clock for that very purpose. So all in all, it's just exciting, it's thrilling, and we've looked forward to this for several years. It's coming about.
thank you very much, and congratulations on your award, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did I talk too much?
Oh, I can add it. You were great.
Thank you.
Dorothy just left. And
Now, what else did you? Does this sound also okay? You can snap now, and you can get a nice. She's taking pictures of my hands. No higher.
I don't look a bit studious. Oh, why is she doing this for the hospital, right? Yes. Right. So it doesn't look quite so tacky.
get the tray off. Get the tray off there.
Hey, would you go back and get a signature on this?
Okay, just what does that machine do that you're standing by?
This is a chemistry analyzer. It analyzes different chemistries in your blood serum. It tells us different things like your things are working. If your cholesterol is too high, it also does HDL cholesterol, which is indicative of a heart problem. Shows us your electrolyte.
What's it called?
Bakos. On the front, it's with a Colder company, of Colder Electronics. They're from Florida.
Okay, Normie. I'm just get your hands around. Throw my garbage on first.
California defeated Kansas City 8-7, so the Sox lead the Royals and Angels by a 1-4 game. The Sox have the day off. They'll begin a 3-game series against the...
So I'll see him, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, Brett answer?
Yeah.
budget for the 222? Oh, come on. It's right at the top. Every year without it, huh? First one he'll go.
No, I'm gonna start working. Hi. Hi. I'll get out. You can focus in here on Dr. Parker. He's
Long time ago.
Let's see, what are you, Mike? You're everything. Yeah, anything we want. Linda DePorter.
Yeah, come get in the picture.
Sure.
Go back right on in, see if we can find Dr. Brucker. I've got to down. Connie's going to be our little hostess guide here.
Good luck. Nice to meet you.
Good.
This is Dr. Grimes.
Dr. Grimes? How you doing?
Dr. Porter.
Housekeeping 3720. Housekeeping.
No. Linda, do you have any idea what you want us to do?
Cardiacs and such, but we send burns and things like spinal cord injuries, that sort of thing out there.
When did you work?
8 years.
8 years? So you were there when Gibson was there?
Yeah, Mark Gibson, right. I started, he left about 2-3 years ago.
She's not here right now.
We,
she's over in X-ray.
I was at South Shore Hospital for, I'm still there, and Sherman. Sherman is more than enough.
It's a busy place.
About 50,000.
Oh, okay, that's right.
A lot of knife and gun clubs, a lot of bad trauma.
Yeah, vehicular trauma, largely. Most of the trauma we see here is that sort of thing, although we had a kid this morning that amputated 2 toes on a lawnmower, 8-year-old. He was careful, he was wearing his shoes, but he slipped on something, and he was holding onto the mower at the time. Instead of letting go, he pulled back and the mower rolled over his foot and cut off the toes. So they were clean cut and they couldn't find the pieces. I don't know if it was a mulching or not, but.
Jay, what? The way you did the lifetime video?
Oh, is that it?
Jay was first take. Like Carrie and I were about to check because I kept laughing.
Quit moving your feet.
Yeah, she did move her foot.
Notice I follow directions.
So you can ask him all the questions.
Okay, we're ready. No, you're Dr. Parker,
Yes.
right? And DePorter.
Linda DePorter. Right.
Okay.
You want a card?
I can read her tag now. This may be kind of crowded, but I assume we're okay here.
Alrighty.
Okay. I'll probably ask you about like how long this helicopter has been in service, and what is the relationship to like our hospital here? I mean, it's not our helicopter, right? But it works in a network of hospitals, or what's? First of all, I'll just ask you. Let me get an idea of what's happening here. Does this helicopter share its facilities with all the hospitals, or is it like a service, like we call when we need you and you come pick up a patient?
This helicopter is operated by City Anthony Medical Center in Rockford.
Okay.
And basically what they do is it is available to all the hospitals and pre-hospital services in this whole northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin area. And so if any of the physicians or paramedics or fire departments or police departments think they need the helicopter for patient care, then they call the helicopter and will automatically respond.
That's exactly what I need you to say. That
And Mike will say that very nice.
No, Linda will say it. I'll just add things to her.
Now, you guys are nice and dressed up today. Are you normally like the doctor and nurse on staff on the helicopter? I mean, would you actually be doing medical treatment when you're flying on the helicopter, the two of you?
Yeah, generally, they're going to fly a flight nurse like Linda and a flight paramedic. We have physicians that have flown with patients. I've flown out of Sandwich and took a cardiac patient in Chicago not too long ago. So we do have physicians that fly on occasion.
Okay.
And we don't dress like this one.
Yeah. But now, is there like oxygen, and what's the helicopter equipped with?
We can take care of any medical emergency or any trauma patient, any patient that's severely injured.
Would you answer about like the actual services that you provide on the helicopter? I mean, what's actually available? So if someone broke their leg or whatever, we would know that you have what you need on the helicopter to treat them right there in the air before they get to the hospital. Okay, so I'll ask you about the actual facilities that are on the. I don't know if facilities is the right word, but the equipment. What's staffed with. Okay.
Or just take what type of patients can you take care of?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Ready? Sure. I'll say in 3, 2, 1. Just talk to me. Ignore the camera. And 3, 2, 1. I'm here now at Sandwich Hospital with Dr. Parker and I'm sorry. You're a nurse, right?
Yes.
Miss DePorter. So Mrs.
Linda
DePorter. Let me start that again. I always do 2 takes on my open. Okay. Ready? And 3, 2, 1. I'm here now outside Sandwich Hospital with Dr. Parker and Linda DePorter. They're part of the Lifeline helicopter staff. And Linda, what is it that this service is going to provide for us on the helicopter?
Lifeline Helicopter is based out of St. Anthony Medical Center in Rockford, Illinois. It has been in service since 1981. Basically, Lifeline is available to anybody in the community who needs its service. Basically, the physicians and nurses in all the surrounding hospitals in the 7 counties in northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin, and also for the paramedics and the ambulance services, fire services, law protection, in this same service area. It's available to all the patients who are either critically injured or have a life-threatening illness.
So if we have a real devastating accident here or something that maybe our hospital here just isn't equipped to handle, you would be on call to come and help us out and bring us to a larger facility?
That's right. We're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and our flight nurse, paramedic, and pilot are at the hospital during that time, available to respond right away when the call comes in.
That's great. Dr. Parker, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what the equipment is like on the helicopter.
Basically, we're handled to take care of any of the patients that will transfer. So if a patient has a cardiac problem, a heart attack, we can handle that. We have oxygen monitors, all the evasive things that we need to do for patients, intravenous lines, medications that we need to give. Anything that can happen to the patient, we can handle. The patients that we're going to be transferring are going to be sick patients, they're going to be unstable patients, so we have to anticipate any of the problems that could occur with them in flight. The patients that we're going to be transferring out of here, cardiac patients, for instance, those are typically very unstable patients and have regular heartbeats that need to be taken care of immediately. So we have all the equipment and the personnel on hand to handle that. Same thing with the critically injured patients. We have everything that we need on there to stabilize them and to hold them until we get them to the receiving facility.
What is the amount of people available or that can be contained in the helicopter? I mean, you have the pilot and your 2 staff workers. I mean, patient-wise, is it one at a time, or can you fit a couple people on there?
We can take a pilot, flight nurse, flight medic, or a physician, and then the patient. On occasion, we have taken if we were taking a pediatric patient, we can take the mother, but we try and limit it because of weight restrictions.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll get to take a little closer look at the helicopter now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much.
My feet.
You guys were great. I fumbled on some of my questions. I'm like, people, how many, size, quantity, weight. Yeah. I might just have your answers. Yeah.
First take everybody, obviously.
Yeah.
Wait till she finds out about the tie.
Well, Karen, why are you?
No, no. That's really smart. So you guys come out of Rockford?
Pardon me?
Do you guys come out of Rockford?
Yeah, we're based in St. Anthony.
shot there
Yeah.
in there.
Sightseeing.
Can I shoot your panels?
Sure. They look real.
Well, there you're talking about doing Foley catheters and all that mean stuff.
I don't mind the idea. It's just.
Just like, you know, put your hand on him or something.
There we go. Take his little pulse here, make sure he's still...
Okay, good.
Are you going to take any more shots?
Nah. You can, hey, enjoy yourself.
Yeah, really, I can't see.
here that you might be using the helicopter for, and what do you do in the hospital here?
We handle about 80% of what comes into the emergency room here in the hospital. The ones that we would transfer out by helicopter would be things like severe neurological trauma, whether it be spinal cord injury or intracranial bleeds, bad strokes, coronaries. Sometimes we would have to transfer out victims of multiple traumas, bad auto accidents where you might have bleeding in the brain, a broken back, broken neck, that sort of thing would not be handled here. Also, it would be very useful for things that would require pediatric intensive care. Children with seizures that are not amenable to normal treatment, patients of any age with bad burns.
Great. That's plenty.